Good morning and welcome back to the 2018 Pokemon Hartford Regional Championships. My name is Gabby Snyder, joined here by Brendan Lewis, and I don't know about you, but we had some very exciting matches already.
Yeah, I'm still, my heartbeat's still coming down from Alberto's a little bit. It wasn't a particularly close set, but that Salamence was just like, me and Joe, we're going to have to go outside and calm down a little bit.
Yeah, I noticed you guys took a step outside, you know, around the hall to calm down, maybe do some nice breathing exercises. But we're back now with top 4. There are 4 trainers left in this tournament, and we are going to feature a match between 2 of them to determine who's going on to finals.
Correct, and they are trainers that are familiar to the stream already. We did just have Stephen Mea on in top 8, who's going to be one of our competitors, and we saw him take a 2-0 victory over Josh Lorsey. He played incredibly well. Joe and I touched on his very aggressive play style. He's got a lot of heavy hitters on his team. And of course, we do have Brady Smith, who was on yesterday in, I believe, round 2, and we watched him take down Ray Rizzo.
We watched him take down Ray Rizzo in a very decisive 2-0 victory.
Correct. So 2 phenomenal players, 2 players that are actually pretty young for the Masters division, just recently in the past year or so, having come up from the seniors division. And we did touch on this a little bit yesterday, how it can be a big transition. We talked about this with Brendan saying, as this was his first regional as a senior, it can be a transition to go from a small pond of the seniors to suddenly a big pond of the Masters, where people are, you know, a little bit older, they've got a lot more experience, there are a lot more of them, and these guys are obviously thriving here.
Yeah, and they are raring to go. I know they've been seated back in our stream area for a few minutes waiting for us to get started, so thank you for their patience, thank you for your patience, and let's jump right into this match. Brady will be on the lower part of your screen, and he is running Mandibuzz, Tapu Fini, Mimikyu, Alolan Marowak, Kartana, and Snorlax versus Steven's team of Arcanine, Porygon 2, Tapu Lele, Gigalith, Tapu Koko, and Kartana.
And we did see Brady in his match yesterday against Ray feature a couple of different modes, and we talked about him, about it in the post-match interview with him. And in game 1, he was able to really dismantle Ray with that Tapu Fini and Marowak combination, using that Lightning Rod to protect Tapu Fini. And we did see Steven just absolutely take that combination apart in just his top 8 match. So I think that's going to be something really interesting to look at. Maybe Brady will instead favor his Snorlax and Mimikyu combination, which is a little bit different. We saw him win game 2 against Ray yesterday. He does have a lot of options, but he is going to have to contend with a Gigalith, which is very strong in Trick Room, even against Snorlax.
Arcanine and Tapu Koko out on the field for Steven, and Brady going to lead the Mandibuzz and the Tapu Fini.
So he has elected to go with the Tapu Fini here in game 1. We did see how Josh had a difficult time playing around Steven's Kartana in game 1, because even though he did have that Marowak, which does offset a lot of the pressure that Tapu Koko puts out, Kartana does not really at all care about Lightning Rod. It doesn't use electric type attacks and can go right at that Tapu Fini without having to worry about its attacks getting wicked away. But Mandibuzz is a nice check to Kartana, being able to use that foul play to hit for huge damage off of Kartana's large attack stat, and it can set up Tailwind to prevent Kartana from running around being one of the faster things on the field.
Yeah, Mandibuzz is certainly one of the most, I think, interesting Pokemon in the metagame right now if you have a defensive play style. A lot of the times when you have a Pokemon such as Mandibuzz with so much bulk, it's hard to run it on a fast team, but with Tailwind, you just set up your Tailwind and suddenly all the Pokemon on your team are fast.
Right, and we saw Brady do that yesterday, where suddenly his Tapu Fini had 2 Calm Minds and Tailwind was up, and he went from having a very defensive combination to a very offensive pairing.
Well, one way to stop Pokemon from being fast is to send in a Pokemon like Porygon 2 who knows Trick Room. We'll have to see if that is a strategy Steven is going for. Volt Switch into the protecting Tapu Fini, and Mandibuzz setting up the Tailwind. So unless this Mandibuzz has Taunt and uses it on that Porygon 2, we could see the Trick Room counter to Tailwind.
So a great job by Brady there, correctly calling the target for what Tapu Koko was going to target with that electric type attack. He gets the Tailwind up for free, takes no damage for it, and now that there is a Tailwind on the field, Tapu Koko is still going to be trying to use his electric type attacks. He can get Marowak in a little bit more freely should he choose to a couple turns from now.
Brady using Calm Mind on that Tapu Fini to possibly set up for a later game sweep. Mandibuzz does indeed taunt that Porygon 2, so whether or not Steven called that could determine how this match moves forwards. Tapu Koko with the Volt Switch into the Mandibuzz this time, giving Stephen the opportunity to remove the Tapu Koko from the field, switch in something else, and revealing the Life Orb for the first time in this game. Depending on what Pokemon he sends in here, we can maybe get an idea for if he was planning on bringing the Trick Room option on his team with something like the Gigalith, or the Arcanine could even just make a second appearance, but probably not ideal given the fact that Tapu Fini did just set up the Calm Mind, did just boost its special attack. It is going to be the Gigalith, so Porygon 2 cannot Trick Room here. Certainly won't be the best spot for Stephen to be in, but he can definitely adjust.
Right, and I do think, as we just did see the Trick Room try to come out, he would very much like to have Trick Room up, as that's a nice answer to Tailwind. But Mandibuzz, of course, does carry Taunt in addition to Tailwind, and can prevent Porygon 2 from going for any sort of a Trick Room. And now he already had the two slowest things on the field, but now he has even slower things on the field. Tapu Fini is up to +1 stage of special attack and special defense. It's going to start going for Muddy Waters. It has yet to take an attack.
Yeah, Muddy Water connecting with both Pokemon on Steven's side of the field. Gets the accuracy drop on Gigalith as well. And given the fact that its attacks aren't that accurate to begin with, that can be a problem. Or you could just knock it out and not give it a chance to attack thanks to the foul play from that Mandibuzz. Porygon 2 with the Thunderbolt into the Tapu Fini.
And Tapu Fini is showing off what it did in Game 1 yesterday when we had Brady here on stream, and is setting up. It's in the Tailwind, and it is starting to pump out attacks at a very high and strong rate. We did see it knock out that Gigalith with the Muddy Water in addition to that foul play, and of course foul play taking advantage of Gigalith's very high attack stat, which despite having a high defense stat, that attack is high enough for the foul play to do enough damage to get a knockout from about 40-45% there. And Tapu Koko does retake the field. Stephen is going to be able to protect his Tapu Koko this turn as the Tailwind runs out, and he's going to have to deal with that Mandibuzz next turn to prevent this Tapu Fini from having Tailwind anymore.
Porygon 2 with Thunderbolt, though, certainly a great option to help with the Pokemon on the field, but Stephen not protecting. Tapu Koko taking a Moonblast, bringing it down to what looks like 1 tick of Sandstorm damage away from a knockout. Mandibuzz with the Roost, removing its flying type attribute, which means this Thunderbolt will no longer be super effective, but it gets a paralysis, so maybe a fair trade depending on how you look at it. Might not have been worth the knockout there on Tapu Koko, but that was sort of inevitable at that point. A Thunderbolt from the Porygon 2 into the Tapu Fini, getting a nice boost from the electric terrain, activating Tapu Fini's Pinch Berry and going to restore his health up back by 50%.
Yeah, so Stephen is able to do some damage that turn. Still not in a great position, as he doesn't really have a way to prevent his Gigalith is down, his Tapu Koko is down. We do know that Porygon has Thunderbolt, but it's not going to be able to take out that Mandibuzz from this range, even in electric terrain, because it doesn't have that nice same type attack bonus boost. And really, it looks like Brady's just going to be able to reset Tailwind here. His Tapu Fini is still in a great position. It's not very threatened by either of these Pokemon after eating its berry, and it's going to be able to start going for some Muddy Waters here. The one thing we're looking for is that Mandibuzz does have to try and think about whether or not it wants to taunt or it wants to just set up Tailwind, but I guess we're not thinking about that at all here.
I mean, I'm sure Brady was thinking about it, but Stephen, you know, I think he made the right call there, clicking in the forfeit. I'm sure that Brady, he probably knows a lot more about this Arcanine than at least I know at this moment in time, since I wasn't paying too much attention earlier. So I think it was smart of him to sort of, you know, maybe not give him that reminder of his possible outs there. But what I find really interesting is that going into team preview, you know, for that Game 1, Stephen saw the Tapu Fini. I'm sure he was aware that it was a Calm Mind Tapu Fini and did not bring the Kartana to sort of counter that.
Right, and that was going to be my first talking point as well, is it was a little curious as to why the Kartana didn't come onto the field there. One thing that can be a little scary for it is that Tailwind option, and I think that's going to be the most important thing for Tailwind, or I'm sorry, for Stephen, not for Tailwind. He's going to have to find a way to either prevent the Tailwind with some sort of an offensive combination, or he's going to have to find a way to get that Trick Room up. So I think one thing that he can do here is he can try to lead his Tapu Koko next to the Porygon 2 and say, you know what, you're going to either have to take this Thunderbolt and set Tailwind up, or I'm going to get Trick Room up on you, and you're not going to be able to taunt me without taking a lot of damage.
Yes, Mandibuzz, I don't know. Given the fact that it does have Roost, roost, and after the Twisted Dimensions took into effect, as long as it can survive the Thunderbolt from the Tapu Koko and a Thunderbolt from the Porygon 2,
right,
it might not be as big of a risk for Brady, but I'm not really sure how that damage calculation will play out. I mean, we saw that Mandibuzz take a Thunderbolt from the Porygon 2.
Right.
I don't think we saw it take one from that Tapu Koko.
And especially if the Misty Terrain is on the field, it's going to be very hard for him to flat out prevent the Tailwinds.
Definitely.
But he's going to have to figure out how to play around it. And Brady's actually going to go back with the exact same strategy we saw him do. You're going to try and go all into my Tapu Fini. I'm going to go with Snorlax and Mimikyu.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about, you know, Tailwind versus Trick Room, but another option Brady does have is, well, I'll just bring my own Trick Room and, you know, I'll use your speed strategy to my advantage. So Tapu Lele Arcanine out on the field for Steven versus that Mimikyu Snorlax combination from Brady.
And it looks like Steven, instead of, like we saw Ray do yesterday, going all in on preventing that Tapu Fini, has selected more of a neutral option where he would be able to handle that Mandibuzz with something like a Moonblast plus a Flare Blitz if he wanted to prevent the Tailwind from going up without being too threatened by that Tapu Fini. But this is also an okay lead. It does enough, exerts enough pressure, has enough utility. We've seen him use that big Shattered Psyche from Tapu Lele that it's still relevant against the Mimikyu Snorlax lead.
Tapu Lele starting this turn off with a Protect, not going to be attacking the Mimikyu or the Snorlax, and we see the first Z move of the game. Looks like Mimikyu is jumping in for something. We'll have to see if it's going to be that, you know, the Z attack move, maybe a Z. Nope, it's Never Ending Nightmare.
Right, it's the Never Ending Nightmare. Which target it's going into is the Tapu Lele. This is a super effective hit. It's going to do a decent chunk of damage to the Tapu Lele despite it being into a Protect. It does about 25-30%, so a great Protect from Steven. And now he's going to have the opportunity. Oh, he was going for that Will-O-Wisp there, and it just is wide of the Snorlax there despite it being a very large target. I think something I might have liked to see Steven do there is maybe instead of trying to go for that Will-O-Wisp is break Mimikyu's Disguise, as then Tapu Lele is threatening a lot of damage onto that Mimikyu.
Brady, interestingly enough, doubled into the Tapu Lele that turn as well.
Yeah, I don't know if maybe he was thinking there was a switch there, or we have seen Steven, we saw in his top 8 set, go right for that turn 1 Z move in one of those games, and his offensive play style is something that we have talked about a lot. Steven constantly trying to throw out those big attacks, and it looks like he even switched it up a little bit, thinking, you know what, maybe Brady's going to see this coming. I'm going to play a different way.
Well, different way is a great way to describe how both these trainers are approaching this game 2 here in top 4. Tapu Lele leaving the field this turn, and Steven revealing that he did decide to bring Kartana to this game. Snorlax revealing Protect, not going to take damage from that Arcanine, won't be burned as well. Mimikyu going straight for an attack to Shadow Ball that Kartana, bringing it down into the red, dropping its special defense by 1 stage, and Arcanine with the Flare Blitz attacking Mimikyu to break the Disguise.
So that Disguise is busted a turn later here, and Kartana is going to be threatening a knockout onto Mimikyu with the Smart Strike attack, provided that no defensive switch-in is made. Steven being very careful with that Lele, because it looks like that might be one of the only ways, unless Tapu Koko is in the back, that he's brought to deal with that Mandibuzz. He knows that that Mandibuzz gave him an incredibly hard time in Game 1, and he needs to make sure that his checks to it are preserved in the back. He knows that he's not going to be able to, you know, do what he needs to do with Lele based on what Brady has on the field here. He doesn't want to be taking those Shadow Balls, so he puts his Lele in the back and does have his Focus Sash broken for his troubles, but Kartana is threatening a lot of damage this turn.
Yeah, Kartana, I think in order to get its worth from this game, really needs to knock out that Mimikyu, and that'll be enough. But Brady switching in the Marowak to also threaten that Kartana and not worry about taking any damage really from a Smart Strike. Tapu Lele returning to the field as well in place of that Arcanine. Kartana Smart Strike into the Marowak, so great defensive switch by Brady there. Snorlax is left to use Belly Drum, so not only did Brady sort of buy himself a little bit of time, he also was able to set that Snorlax up to start dealing damage as well.
Yeah, and that Snorlax is now very threatening, but it is going to be the slowest thing on the field. It's slower than everything bar, the Gigalith that's on Steven's team, and He is in a pretty good position, Stephen, offensively, that if he wants to try and deal with Snorlax this turn, he does have that opportunity. He has to be careful of the Protect, but he did leave Kartana around. I was expecting to see some kind of an attack into Kartana there. The defensive switch in comes, but no high horsepower to try and take Kartana off the field, which is a big threat to Brady's team. So he does have the potential to double tap either of these Pokemon that are on the field right now and take a knockout on either.
Yeah, certainly decisions are going to be made this turn. Kartana deciding to attack the Snorlax with a Sacred Sword, dropping it down to just below 50% of its health, and Stephen following up with the Shattered Psyche.
And Stephen guesses right. It looks like he's going to be trading his Tapu Lele or his Kartana for the Snorlax based on whatever Pokemon that Marowak decides to target. You know, based on what we've seen, he does have that Mimikyu. It looks like, you know, I would suspect... Oh, and he does switch targets, so it's actually going to come down to what Snorlax is doing here. Marowak is not going to survive the Shattered Psyche, but Snorlax is going to pick up a knockout. So it's still a trade, just not the trade I thought was coming.
Yeah, Snorlax with the return going to knock out the Kartana, but Snorlax at such little health with the terrain up. I think that Tapu Lele should be able to knock it out with a Psychic, so Brady might be forced to reveal the Tapu Fini if he decided to bring it to this game.
Right, and I think Stephen might be revealing here what he has in the back as well. We've only seen his Kartana, his Tapu Lele, and his Arcanine, I believe, at this point. So what the fourth Pokemon here is going to come into play for both players, and it is the Tapu Koko. Stephen has shown that it is a Life Orb Tapu Koko based on that Volt Switch, and the Kartana from Brady is going to come out.
So interestingly enough, Brady decided not to bring his own terrain to this battle, instead bringing his own Kartana to really put a lot of offensive pressure on Stephen's side of the field.
And Kartana and Tapu Koko do have a very fickle matchup. There are a lot of Kartana that do opt to train a little bit more special defensively so that they can take attacks like the Thunderbolt from Tapu Koko. It is able to take that should it opt to do so. But if it's not trained that way, Stephen is in a position where he can try to go for a Psychic, which might just miss the knockout, but he would be able to threaten Kartana here. So definitely a much closer game than game one. This is really going to come down to the wire here in the end game.
Yeah, Snorlax a huge presence on the field as well, so Stephen has to take a moment and think hard about what he thinks Brady's going to do. Which Pokemon does he want to be removed from the field? At first, going to switch out his own Tapu Lele for the Arcanine to intimidate the Snorlax and the Kartana. Definitely the intimidate on the Kartana, I think, is what he was aiming for there, as Snorlax, his attack is so high at this point, not going to make as much of a difference. Thunderbolt into the Snorlax, trying to get that knockout, but Snorlax holds on with just 8 HP with Leaf Blade from the Kartana into the Arcanine. Does hardly any damage. Snorlax with the return, retaliating against that Tapu Koko for the knockout.
Oh my goodness, such a close play. When I saw that Arcanine take the field, I was like, wow, Stephen managed to find a safe play here in the end game. He's going to switch in that Arcanine. Leaf Blade's not going to be able to knock out Tapu Koko. That Thunderbolt is going to go into the Snorlax, but it's so bulky. It has so much HP, so much special defense that it's able to hang on, and now it's starting to look a little bit dicey here for Stephen. That very even game has just taken a big swing in Brady's turn, an 8 HP swing.
Yeah, we know the Mimikyu in the back of Brady's party is faster than that Arcanine as well. I believe we saw that play out earlier in this game. So really, Stephen, lots of tough decisions here to make. He has to knock out that Snorlax, but he also has to stop the Kartana from attacking this turn. Brady opting to switch the Kartana out, getting rid of that Intimidate and bringing Mimikyu back on the field. Snorlax with the Protect this turn, not ready to make a gamble on what Stephen's going to play. Psychic from the Tapu Lele into the Snorlax, and Flare Blitz from the Arcanine into that Mimikyu. And
I'm interested to see how much damage this will do, because it could play in big, and it is able to hang on there. But breaking the disguise earlier in the game seems to be paying dividends here as we come down the stretch. I think it was a good decision by Brady to try and reset the Intimidate that it was on his Kartana so he can bring it back in later and be assured that he's going to take a knockout on that Tapu Lele if he needs to. Snorlax is going to go down this turn. Mimikyu also likely going to go down this turn. It looks like Stephen might have been able to kind of play himself back into a position by reactivating that Psychic terrain where he is in an okay position coming down the stretch here.
Tapu Lele with the Psychic to knock out the Mimikyu, meaning Arcanine is free to to attack that Snorlax for the knockout. So Stephen, unless this Kartana has some sort of trick up its sleeve, it looks like we'll be getting a game 3 here in top 4.
Yeah, and you know, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe even a curious play to cycle out that Kartana, as he's now forced to bring Kartana in and make it take on 2 Pokemon, one that it likes facing, one that it really doesn't like facing. And I think maybe he was a little bit iffy on some of the damage calculations, whether he'd be able to knock out Tapu Lele, maybe indicating that he's not carrying that Smart Strike. And now it's looks like a game 3, like you said.
Well, Brady, the game's not over because Brady uses Detect, which is really interesting. I mean, in game 1, we saw Stephen lock in a forfeit pretty much immediately as the tides turned against his favor. But Brady happy to take a turn, see what Stephen's going to do. He might have a plan.
And maybe to stall out the Psychic Terrain, but actually he knows his condition is, the win condition is to take out the Arcanine, and gets the critical hit, but not quite enough damage, and it's now going to take a Psychic Terrain Psychic for its troubles, and we are going to go to game 3.
Good information for Brady, though. The Leaf Blade critical hit was enough to reveal the berry that Arcanine is holding. So overall, you know, a decent well played game 2. I think Brady got a bit of interesting information. I'm more curious to see how the Pokemon selection is going to play out in game 3, because I think that was really what decided how this match played out.
I agree with you, and it looks like Brady tried to switch modes here, and it didn't go as well as we saw it go on stream yesterday. I thought the decision to bring Kartana may be a little curious. I think that might have been him expecting that Gigalith was coming this game. As he's, you know, these players, there's a lot of mind games going on here. Stephen, you know, may have some sort of information. Maybe these players have talked that they know that Brady likes to go with that Mimikyu Snorlax lead, and Gigalith is one of those answers, and maybe Kartana was an answer to the answer. Some sort of a lot going on here. Really what I thought that game came down to was, I believe it was the third to last turn there, where Brady made the option to try and switch out that Kartana, and I think Stephen really just made a nice read there, knowing that his Lele was being threatened, but he's going to sit in and attack with it.
Definitely. Here we go. Game 3. Tailwind versus Trick Room. Tailwind and Trick Room versus Trick Room. Kartana, you know, looking at how that game played out, I was just thinking what you said about how Kartana might have been like a counter pick for the Gigalith.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like Brady was expecting that Stephen would, again, try and set up Trick Room, bring the Gigalith, and then Brady, with that fast Mimikyu, would have been able to easily use that Kartana to sort of stop Stephen's Trick Room mode and then use Trick Room of his own. That wasn't what played out. I don't know if Brady's going to try and do a similar strategy going into this game. The game he won because of Tailwinds, really.
Right.
And in game 3, sometimes you want to return to what worked.
Absolutely, and I would be shocked to see him not try and go back to that game 1 mode. I don't think he was given any reason in this game to try and go with something like the Mimikyu Snorlax combination. I have a feeling I'm about to eat my words, but I think that his best option is going to try and go back to that Tapu Fini mode. With Stephen leading the Tapu Lele and the Arcanine into game 2 showed that he was not afraid of Tapu Fini. He was able, comfortable with leading those 2 Pokemon that are a little bit on the lesser side of the Fini, but Lele and Kartana coming out here.
Lele and Kartana on Stephen's side of the field versus the Marowak and the Mandibuzz on Brady's side of the field. So that Marowak, we have to worry about the Z move from that Tapu Lele, as we saw that get a knockout in game 1, but a very interesting adjustment by both these trainers. I
think we can safely say that neither of us has any idea what's going through these 2 players' heads right now. This game has officially gone off the rails. These players have their own ideas. You know, there are 2 very interesting leads here. I'm a little surprised not to see the Tapu Fini, because I think it would have been better to have Tapu Fini as a lead and put Marowak in the back. Go back to that combination of the Misty Seed with the Mandibuzz, because it is heavily threatened by Tapu Lele as it stands right now with that Moonblast, since it doesn't have its special defense boost.
Kartana leaving the field, Arcanine taking its place, going to intimidate that Marowak and weaken its damage potential as we go into game 1. Big question here, though, is will that Marowak stay on the field as well? It does. Taunt from the Tapu Lele into the Mandibuzz, going to stop the Tailwind this turn, and Shadow Bone from that Marowak attacking into the Tapu Lele. It's been intimidated, but it's still enough to get the knockout even without a critical hit.
Wow, a lot going back and forth here. Some interesting trades made. Stephen going all out, saying, I'm going to taunt you. You're not going to get Tailwind, but I guess I have to trade my Tapu Lele if that's something that I want to do. Maybe he's thinking that that Marowak isn't going to stick around, as it is being threatened by one of those Shattered Psyches. But Brady definitely coming out on top. He's free to kind of cycle his Mandibuzz out here if he wants to into something that can take some of those hits a little bit better. If he is going to try and go into that Tapu Fini there, perhaps it's in the back. He has to be really careful of a Leaf Blade, though.
Smart strike from the Kartana, starting this turn off, attacking that Mandibuzz for a little bit of damage. Arcanine following up with a Flare Blitz, also going to target the Mandibuzz. So even though it's been taunted, Stephen definitely thinking that Mandibuzz is still a threat, or worried about
he's going to double target Kartana.
And the foul play from that Mandibuzz into the Kartana, followed up from a Flare Blitz from Brady. So 2 knockouts already, 2 turns into this game.
Oh my goodness, this is going back and forth. It has swung so quickly in Brady's favor. And something that I did talk about with Joe maybe a couple times this weekend is you can, you feel a little bit safer making hard reads when you're up in the series. And there are a lot of reads going on in game 3, turn 1. These players are making reads back and forth, trying to figure out what's going on, who's going to do what. And the entire series just goes in Brady's favor based on that one turn 1. I think you really have to think about playing much safer when you're going into a game 3. You need to give yourself a chance.
Dazzling Gleam from that Tapu Koko, going to target down the Mandibuzz. Mandibuzz finally knocked out. Stephen getting his first knockout of this game. Arcanine, first there's going to be a little tick of life orb damage there. Arcanine following up with a Flare Blitz to attack the Marowak. Again, not going to be enough for a knockout. Slowly getting it closer to the KO range, but with a Tapu Koko on the field as well. Marowak with a Perish Song.
Wow, I did not see that coming.
I was not expecting that.
That's a really cool tech on Marowak, and this situation right here is why it's such a cool tech on Marowak. Brady was able to pick up 2 very quick knockouts, and all of a sudden, he drops 100% win condition down on the table. Now all he has to do is, with his Pokemon advantage, he has to switch around a couple times, throw a couple protects, and there's absolutely nothing that Stephen can do about preventing his Pokemon from fainting in 3 turns, and he clicks the forfeit button.
Yeah, we've seen that, 2 Pokemon versus 3 Pokemon Perish Song a lot in the past. I believe Wolf Glick is a huge fan of running those kind of strategies on his team, and it's hard to pull off because you have to keep it a secret. We only saw that Flare Blitz and the Shadow Bone in games 1 and 2. I assumed it was a Bone Meringue Marowak, but that's why you run Perish Song right there. You can lock in a win.
There it is.
Bring yourself into the finals of a regional championship.
Right, as close to a win button as there is there. He sets up that end game for himself, clicks Perish Song, and the forfeit comes in immediately, and that's what he brings it for, those 2 knockouts early in the game. And it really felt like that entire game swung on that turn 1 play by Brady, going for the knockout, immediately taking it onto the Tapu Lele, and Mandibuzz gets taunted for its troubles, but clearly not a problem, as he's able to take Kartana on turn 2, drop down the Perish Song, and that's the set.
And that's the set. And speaking of sets, we still have one more top 4 match to bring you. We're going to go ahead and get those trainers seated, and we'll be back as soon as we can with more Pokemon action here at the 2018 Hartford Regional Championships. Please stay tuned.